I'm DK Roster. The Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzales, is hosting a news conference at the head office of the Ministry of Public Utilities, Alexandra Street, St. Clair. We're bringing you live coverage on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, Sweet 100.1 FM, Next 99.1 FM, and on Facebook at TTT Live Online.
Well, a very good afternoon to members of the media, to our viewing and listening audiences, wherever you may be in Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to this news conference. Thanks for being here at the Ministry of Public Utilities. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of introducing our Honorable Minister of Public Utilities, the Honorable Marvin Gonzales. Sitting next to him is the Chairman of the Water and Sewage Authority, Dr. Lennox Sealy. And next to him is Mr. Poon King, the acting CEO of the Water and Sewage Authority. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I will ask the Honorable Minister to make a statement, and then we will proceed from there. Minister.
Thank you very much, John. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. Good afternoon to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And on my left, Dr. Lennox Sealy, who is the current chairman of the Water and Sewage Authority. On his left is Mr. Poon King, who is the CEO of the Water and Sewage Authority, and to the permanent secretary, as well as the deputy permanent secretary. So thank you very much for responding to our request to have this news conference. Basically, it's not going to be a long one. It's just really to inform the national community of a critical decision that was taken by the government of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority. If I'm to go back, if you can allow me to just go back a little bit, you would recall that in August 2020, shortly after the general elections and the government was formed, the cabinet was formed, the Honorable Prime Minister put together a cabinet subcommittee to look into the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority. And the main purpose or the main function of the cabinet subcommittee was to, as I quote, to review the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority and to determine a strategy for enabling the authority to achieve its mandate. And that is because, ladies and gentlemen, as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we have had and continue to have serious concerns with respect to the water supply situation across the country. And we believe then that the time has come and the time has arrived for us to seriously and to critically look into the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority and to take whatever appropriate action that is needed to ensure that the authority deliver upon its mandate, which is to provide the people of Trinidad and Tobago with an efficient water supply. The Cabinet Subcommittee, comprising of myself as the Chairman, Minister of Public Utilities, the Minister of Social Development, Ms. Donna Cox, the Minister of National Security, Minister Stuart Young, the Minister of Planning and Development, Ms. Camille Robinson-Regis, the Minister of Housing, Ms. Penelope Beckles, as well as the Minister of Energy, Minister Franklin Khan. We produced a report to the Prime Minister dated the 11th of December. All right, we were given a mandate to the end of November to produce a report to the Cabinet and to make appropriate recommendations. The report was handed to the Prime Minister on the 11th and formally submitted to the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago on the 11th of January 2021, during which time the Cabinet has been deliberating on the major recommendations of the report, which culminated in a special cabinet meeting held at the Diplomatic Center yesterday. Coming out of the recommendations of the report, the government has effectively decided as follows: that with immediate effect, the chairman of the Water and Sewage Authority, Dr. Lennox Sealy, will be appointed an executive director and pursuant to Section 17(1) will assume full control of the Water and Sewage Authority as an executive director, as well as the chief executive officer, thereby replacing the current acting CEO, Mr. Poon King. The government has also taken a decision to appoint a deputy executive director pursuant to Section 17(3) of the Act to assist Dr. Sealy in the discharge of his duties as executive director of the authority. The government has also put together a cabinet subcommittee to oversee the transition, or rather the transformation, of the Water and Sewage Authority, and such cabinet subcommittee, comprises of the Minister of Planning and Development, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, who shall be chair of the cabinet subcommittee, myself as the Minister of Public Utilities, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Minister Brian Manning, the Minister of Sports and Community Development, Ms. Shamfa Kojo, the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for communication, Minister Simon de Nobrega, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, as well as the Minister of Social Development and Family Services. The government has also taken a decision that the report of the Cabinet Subcommittee dated the 11th of December 2020 will be laid in the Parliament next week, Friday, following a ministerial statement, and that the public, the people and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will have full access to the recommendations of the report, and rather the findings of the report. If I'm to just briefly quote, because I do not propose to go into the findings of the report at this time before it is fully laid in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, but if I'm to just quote the first paragraph of the executive summary, let me first say what, or rather quote the executive summary, the first paragraph of the executive summary. The Water and Sewage Authority has become an unwieldy, unproductive, unresponsive organization that has deteriorated and is no longer efficiently serving the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. In numerous instances and over many decades, efficiency was sacrificed for, inter alia, political patronage and management accountability exchanged for industrial stability, resulting in an organization in which there is little correlation between the contents of collective agreements and the realities of providing a reliable service to the national population at an affordable and acceptable cost to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. And in essence, just to summarize, the reason why the government has taken the decision to appoint an executive director and a deputy executive director is because the cabinet is of the firm belief that the issues surrounding the water sector, and in particular the Water and Sewage Authority, is a management problem, and therefore we need to organize and reorganize and re-engineer the management of the Water and Sewage Authority, and that's the only way in which the people of this country can benefit from an efficient water supply. And that is all I have to say at this point in time, and perhaps I would just take about 2 or 3 minutes to field some of the questions, reminding you that I cannot delve into the contents of the report at this time because the cabinet has decided that the report should be laid in the Parliament so that the people of Trinidad and Tobago can have full access to it.
Before we take questions, could I just ask you to identify yourselves and the media house you represent? You may pose your questions now.
Good afternoon, Minister Jess Lamb from CNC3 News. Given what you said and your, having to act on discretion and being able to respond to certain things, could you say whether or not corruption was one of the findings unearthed by the subcommittee as it pertains to WASA?
For me to say that corruption is not an issue within the Water and Sewage Authority, I would not be truthful, to my oath of office. All right. Yes, corruption and the allegations of corruption and the perception of corruption around the Water and Sewage Authority is an issue. And as we look to transform the organization, that is one of the things that the new executive management will have to deal with, creating this new culture within the organization to eradicate that perception and the reality of corruption in its operations.
Minister, restructuring of WASA, that has been on the pipeline for Is there any decision taken to cut WASA staff?
No. At this point in time, the government has not taken a decision to engage in any voluntary separation or cutting of staff. This is something that the new management of the Water and Sewage Authority would have to, they have to conduct a comprehensive audit of the staff composition of the authority. But I can tell you that based on the information received by the Cabinet Subcommittee, most of the reports and the documents that were submitted to us conducted even by independent organization, even under the previous UNC government in 2013, it suggests that the Water and Sewage Authority is overstaffed. I can even go so far to tell you and to tell the national community that in 2013, WASA commenced a voluntary separation program in response to an IDB loan arrangement with the purpose of reducing the staff composition by 2,500 workers. 1,200 workers, or employees rather, participated in that voluntary separation. At that point in time, WASA was 5,000. The organization employed 5,000 employees, both permanent and temporary. Approximately 1,200 employees participated in that VSEP program, and it cost the people of Trinidad and Tobago somewhere in the region of $360 million. And by 2015, the staff composition remained at 5,000. It cost this country $360 million in a VSEP program. 1,200 employees participated in that VSEP program and exited the organization. But for some strange reason, by the year 2015, the amount of employees and the establishment of the organization remained at 5,000. And that is one of the key findings of the report.
Based on that point, Minister, the subcommittee is tasked with overseeing transformation of WASA. Can you just indicate what manner this transformation, or how this transformation may pan out? Would we see a dissolution of WASA entirely, a new organization perhaps?
It was one of the recommendations of the report. The cabinet certainly has a different view in which, by the manner in which the transition should take place. The cabinet is of the view that with an empowered management team and a management that is held accountable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and to be given the mandate to manage in the way that any modern organization ought to be managed, that there is absolutely no need to wind down the operations of WASA at this point in time. That you put together a very sound management team, the level of transformation that is required can be achieved as it is at this point.
Minister, good afternoon. Urban from TV6. So just to clarify in my mind, this committee was made up of mainly ministers, only ministers?
The cabinet subcommittee that submitted the report?
Yes.
Yes.
So did you all get any technical expertise?
Oh, yeah.
Input? Did
Yes.
you just rely on past reports?
Oh, no. We got independent advice, legal advice, HR advice, operational advice. So the committee co-opted several disciplines to assist it to understand the problems of the Water and Sewage Authority. So it was not a simple exercise of reading past reports. It was about reviewing reports, which we found the conclusions and the recommendations were very much similar over the last 20 years. But several other documentation and reports from within the organization were forwarded to the committee that previous reports didn't have the benefit of. So it gave our committee, in my view, a greater and a more in-depth analysis of the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority, which resulted in a very comprehensive proposal being submitted to the cabinet. I can say it is one of the best reports, and even from previous ministers, with their experience, they can tell you it was one of the better type of assessment that was done within the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority in recent times.
Right, but of course, Minister, you would appreciate that as ministers, you all came together, this subcommittee created these proposals, took it to cabinet, was approved, and then now we're seeing changes in a state body, which is WASA. So some may argue that an independent body should have been the one to make recommendations to be considered by cabinet. It looks like it's just cabinet basically making decisions as it relates to the state body.
Well, the cabinet has executive control over Trinidad and Tobago. The cabinet has a constitutional function to perform insofar as it relates to the management of Trinidad and Tobago. In any event, once persons don't get water in their taps, they blame the cabinet, they blame the minister. And therefore, what this cabinet has done by putting together a cabinet subcommittee to look into the operations and getting assistance from outside to put forward a proposal that would see the transformation of the Water and Sewage Authority is well within the power of the cabinet, because at the end of the day, when people don't get water, they don't blame the CEO, they don't blame the unions, they don't blame the employees, they blame the minister, who has full responsibility for the management of the Water and Sewage Authority. And as a matter of fact, there's even a political price to pay when people don't get water in their taps.
Minister, could you just clarify the immediate changes that you made as it relates to Dr. Lennox Sealy? And is it that Mr. Poon King will no longer be with WASA?
Mr. Poon King's substantive position, he has been acting CEO for the last 4 years. His substantive position is Director of Customer Services. So as of tomorrow, he will assume his substantive position in the Water and Sewage Authority as Director of Customer Services, Mr. Poon King. All right, and Dr. Sealy will now assume the portfolio of the Executive Director and the new CEO of the organization.
And you said that he would need a deputy executive.
So Cabinet has also taken a responsibility to appoint a deputy executive director, and we are now in the process of filling that position. It is vacant at this point in time, but we hope that given the critical nature and the seriousness of this responsibility and this task and this undertaking, that such position will be filled within the shortest time possible.
Could you just explain what does it need to be so immediate? Why do we have to get Mr. Poon King back to his previous position or relinquish of this immediately today?
Because given the gravity of the situation with respect to the water sector and the management of the Water and Sewage Authority, we have to take drastic action at this point in time to get the management of the authority in a place where it's supposed to be, so that the authority can deliver upon its mandate to provide an efficient water supply to the country. The cabinet, based on the findings of the cabinet subcommittee, is of the view that the problems in WASA are associated with the management of the authority over the last 20 years. And to fix the problems in WASA, it requires firm, decisive, dedicated team of managers to get the organization in the place where it's supposed to be, so that it can deliver upon its mandate to the people of this country to provide an efficient water supply.
Just my final question.
Sure.
We heard for like decades that our water problem was due to aging assets that we never repaired, and now today you're telling us it's because of management. Is it that aging assets is no longer an issue?
Aging asset is an issue, not to the extent to which it was made a big issue in the past, in my view. I have been Minister of Public Utilities for the last 6 months, and I came into this job with an open mind. The first thing I heard, just like yourself, was that the key issues with respect to WASA is aging infrastructure. I can tell you I am not of that view. I believe, yes, there are aspects of aging infrastructure around the country, but if you were to ask me what is the most critical intervention that is required in WASA at this point in time, I would tell you that it is management of the authority, holding people to account, setting KPIs, setting standards by which they operate, and when they operate outside of that, they be held accountable for it. An organization cannot be corrupt if managers and management are not doing what they're supposed to do to foster that culture of openness and transparency in the organization. So I'm saying, therefore, yes, to some extent, investments ought to be made with respect to some of the aging infrastructure. But when one assesses all the information at hand with respect to the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority, I am of the firm view, and based on the findings of the report, and based on the information that was submitted to the cabinet, we believe that once you get management right, and not only in WASA, it is happening all over Trinidad and Tobago, not holding people to account will result in any organization dying. And we believe then that the first order of business in the transformation of WASA is getting management right and getting the management, a team of dedicated managers to drive the other critical areas of transformation in technology, in the management of its financial affairs, in the way in which you structure the organization, getting KPIs, holding people to account. And most importantly, Trinidad and Tobago is not water scarce. We are faced with a desalination bill of almost $7 million per month. Why are we buying desalinated water when all the evidence suggests that if you drill for your wells in some of the water-rich areas around Trinidad and Tobago, we can have much more water than is necessary. But yet still, we are buying desalinated water to the tune of $7 million per month. If you get management right, and you get the Water Resource Agency, the WRA, within WASA to do what they're supposed to do, and you drill for those wells, you rehabilitate those wells, you can bring about almost 30 to 40 million gallons of water in the grid, thereby removing the country's dependence on desalination water and saving this country hundreds of millions of dollars within the shortest time possible. So I can go into a lot of details. When you get the report, you will understand what I'm saying. But suffice it to say, you get a team of managers to make those critical decisions. You invest in your infrastructure. You get the necessary technology. You drill for your wells. You win for the necessary waters in the critical areas around Trinidad and Tobago. The country will eventually start to see an improvement in their water supply and removing its dependence on desalinated water as well as water trucking. As a minister, I can tell you it's an embarrassment to me. It's a national embarrassment that you have to rely so heavily on water trucks to put water in people's tanks when the evidence suggests that we have water all over the country that we can make use of. But if you get a team of managers in place who are dedicated and focused to getting what has to be done, we can see a turnaround in our water sector within the shortest time possible.
Minister, the transformation of WASA will require funding.
Yes.
Where will the money come from?
So we've had a number of offers from the IDB, from CAF, from private sector, international partners. So we have a number of options that are available on the table, but the new executive team, as well as the ministerial team that I've just announced, will be meeting with those agencies who are offering assistance in the transformation of WASA, and based on what might be most feasible, we will go back to Cabinet with a recommendation so as to identify a source of funding for the transformation process. Yes, and I agree with you. It is going to take some money, but it is going to be monies well spent, because you're talking about your water sector. WASA also has to provide support to the agricultural sector. We're talking about transforming the country and moving towards agriculture as the resources and the monies that we are getting from our hydrocarbon continue to dwindle. If we have to transform the economy and to boost the agricultural sector, WASA has a critical role to play in that. And therefore, any investment that we make in our water sector will redound to the benefit of the for the economy of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Minister, tell me, what percentage of the population receives a 24/7 supply of water?
In the dry season, it's about 34. I stand to be corrected. In the rainy season, it's somewhere in the region of 45%. Mr. Poon King? Yeah.
Is this satisfactory?
Oh, that is unsatisfactory. I mean, you have to, as I've just explained a short while ago, we have the available sources of water, groundwater from our wells, and if we can exploit those, the country, I'm not making a promise, I'm not the type of politician that likes to make promises, but I feel safe to say that it is possible, once we do what we're supposed to do and channel our limited financial resources in making the appropriate investments in WASA, that percentage of 45 could be increased by 80 or 90%.
Minister, when are you going to meet us are going to meet the unions representing their members?
Well, that now falls to the new Executive Director, Dr. Sealy. Dr. Sealy has been in the job for, what, 6 weeks, Doctor? Or 2 months?
Yeah.
And I know he has been examining the full operations of the organization, understanding all its stakeholders. The union is a critical stakeholder, and knowing and having regard to the fact that we are now moving full steam into the transformation process, the unions obviously would have to be engaged in that process.
And so, just one question for me. The public looking on, I guess one fundamental question still hasn't been tonight is when. Because for decades, for years, they've been grappling with this issue of when are we going to get an improvement in water supply. I know the report needs to be within Parliament and decisions need to be. I know you said you're a politician not to make promises, but if you had to give a timeline as to when the public can expect this increase and this improvement in water supply, can you give me an estimated time?
So my next mandate is to put a program of critical works forward to the Cabinet for its approval. And that program of critical works would entail rehabilitation of existing plants that are constantly breaking down and causing disruption across the country in the water supply. We've heard recently the Picton 2 pump, it broke down and it caused a disruption in the water supply to several parts of Port of Spain and Cascade, to some extent in Santa Cruz. And based on our assessment over the last 2 months, we've recognized that WASA's plant, most of their water treatment plants, most of their machinery, they are in a complete state of disrepair. And a critical thing that needs to be done in the short term is to prioritize some investments with respect to modernizing and upgrading some of their plants, as well as rehabilitating some wells strategically located around the country in areas that are underserved, and getting some more water into the grid from new wells, again, in strategic areas around the country. And once I put forward that program of critical works to be undertaken, I am confident that by the end of the year, once all things being equal, and going into next year, putting more dependence on groundwater as opposed to surface water, the country can see and will see an improvement in their water supply. But these things cannot happen if you do not have an efficient executive management working with the ministry and working with the government to make these things happen. Procurement and all these things in WASA take years. It takes a year or 2 years sometimes to complete some projects that should be completed in months. So I talk about management. I don't want to go into details, but those are some of the things that we have to re-engineer within the organization to make some of those critical projects a reality so that the people of this country can see and experience an improvement in their water supply.
Minister, what about bringing rural areas and those remote areas on the grid? Would that also be considered critical?
Of course, I'm telling you, I don't want to disclose the location, but right after this news conference, I'm going into a rural community that has been suffering for a lack of water, especially during the dry season. And this is a rural community that is rich in lovely water courses and clean water going down into some of the major areas in the East-West corridor. If you just build a nice little intake there, that is not going to cost much. 600 people who live, citizens who live in that particular area, can experience a 24/7 water supply. And the chairman can tell you, every time we talk, my focus is always on developing localized sources so that the people who live in that area can see an improvement in their water supply. So this rural community that I'm going to be visiting this evening is along that same line. They have access to lovely streams and rivers, and we are looking to develop some intakes there that they are going to see an improvement in their water supply. And I intend to do that all around the country, especially in rural communities.
Minister, government invested billions of dollars over the years. Do you think that that money was just basically went down the drain? It brought no returns?
It brought, when over the last 10 years or so, over 23 billion TT dollars was spent in WASA. And you look into what are some of the things that this money was spent, in my view, the vast majority of that money was spent not in trying to improve the water supply to the people of this country. It was spent in having to pay bills, pay contractors, overtime payments, hefty salaries, all kinds of things, not related to providing the people of this country with an efficient water supply.
How WASA intends to deal with its mounting debt?
And that is part of the assessment that we have to do at the level of the Cabinet Subcommittee and the new executive management. We'd have to put forward a recommendation to the Cabinet on that. Because in any transformation, it's going to cost money, but you have to deal with the reality that is before you, which is the debts, the $650 million or so owed to private contractors. And of course, in a new WASA, a lot of these works can be done in-house, as opposed to going out to private contractors. So you're talking about reorganizing and transforming WASA. That is what we are talking about.
How are you going to hold management accountable?
I can't hold them. You have to hold the executive team that I'm put together. That is their responsibility. I noticed something in the papers this morning where a WASA manager was placed on, well, disciplinary, some investigation that I happen to be mentioned in that report. And at least, without going into much details, I am pleased to see that the management of WASA is taking action against its own for something that has gone fundamentally wrong with one of its senior managers. And that is what I'm talking about. It wasn't as a result of an intervention by the minister or an instruction of the minister to take action against an employee of WASA for alleged breach of the code of ethics of WASA. But you would expect in any modern organization that is worthy of being called an organization, that you hold people to account for when things go wrong.
When are we going to see all of this being rolled out, Minister?
It has started now.
Minister, you said you'll hold people to account if things don't go well. What if Dr. Sealy doesn't perform?
Dr. Sealy's contract will be a performance-based contract. The new executive team at WASA, they will get performance-based contract.
And this is new,
This is new.
as of tomorrow.
Yes.
Full
And,
executive.
yes. And that's how you hold people to account. So thank you very much.
Well, are there no questions? I want to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for attending, particularly at short notice, and for your report.
But before we end, sorry, John, I really apologize for that. On my behalf personally, and on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to say a heartfelt thanks to Mr. Alan Poon King for the 4 years that he held and led the organization. Because as I told him a short while ago, I understand how difficult a task it was for him. I knew it came about at a tremendous personal sacrifice and sacrifices to his family. I can tell you, if I message Mr. Poon King on a Sunday at 10 o'clock, or at 12 o'clock, or at 2 o'clock on a Sunday, or any other day, or late at night, I am guaranteed of a response from him. So, as a minister, I know these things come with tremendous personal sacrifices and sacrifices to your family. Public service in Trinidad and Tobago, as a matter of fact, anywhere around the world, it's not easy. And oftentimes we come down hard on people. And we don't recognize that the work that they do comes with tremendous sacrifice. And in that regard, I want to thank him very much. And I want to encourage him to work closely with Dr. Sealy and his new executive team, because I believe the new executive of WASA can only benefit from his tremendous wealth of experience and his professionalism and his know-how and his understanding of the operations of the Water and Sewage Authority. And therefore, on my behalf and on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to thank him very much for his 4 years in leading that organization, as well as to thank Dr. Sealy, Dr. Lennox Sealy, as the new Executive Director of WASA, for agreeing to this high level of public service as we look towards transforming the water sector in Trinidad and Tobago. It is not going to be an easy task, but it is a task for which the government, as Minister of Public Utilities and as the new Executive of Management, we are determined to complete for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I thank you very much for that.
Thank you again, Minister, and thank you, members of the media, for attending the news conference.